Hey, I'm Rachael.
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Ballot podcast. I'm your host, Rachael Siegel, here with my co-host, Amanda Alvaro. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Rachael.
How has your week been? What's been going on?
What a week it has been. It has been spicy. It has been a big week.
Say the least.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm not even in Parliament anymore. I watching everything unfold has, like as a political strategist, as a former staffer, just every time something happened in this story, it was like, okay, what's gonna be the next step? And by the story that I'm talking about, I mean that a Nazi was invited to Parliament by the Speaker of the House and to listen to President Zelensky's address last Friday. Obviously, the Speaker didn't know who he was inviting and who he was recognizing in the House. He was a constituent of his, and has taken the blame, has stepped down, and we're going to talk about that. But it just has so many different issues within it, and let's dive into that.
Okay. So if you haven't been following the story, just a brief recap is that President Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was here. He addressed Parliament, and as part of that day, the House Speaker, he invited, as you've said, this person who was a constituent in his riding. He recognized him as a Ukrainian veteran. It was later revealed by media, actually, so hadn't been properly vetted, later revealed that he fought in a Nazi unit during
World War II.
The
latter.
Thank you.
The latter part of World War II.
Yeah.
When Canada was aligned with Russia by that point. So when the Speaker introduced him saying that he fought against the Russians, I think if you watch the Speaker's introduction, the video, something kind of, a light bulb kind of goes off. He kind of pauses and thinks, wait a second, does that mean they weren't allied with us at that point? So I'm going to call this a huge mistake, a big down for not even the government this week. I think it was a big down for Parliament. It was, I had a lot of friends in the gallery, as I'm sure that you did, for President Zelensky's address, and talking to them about, welcoming this man into our greatest government institution did not feel great. It wasn't a good situation.
No, and it became a parliamentary embarrassment, a Canadian embarrassment, and a global embarrassment. So there was a tremendous amount of fallout. And what happened next was the House Speaker, Anthony Rota, he apologized. His apology was met with, as you can imagine, a lot of resistance, particularly from the opposition parties, but not just from the opposition parties, right?
No, absolutely.
And calls for his resignation were swift, happened almost immediately, and he then resigned the next day. So he it's not very often that a House Speaker resigns.
In fact, it's only happened, I think, one other time, and it was a woman who was going to the Senate, wasn't it?
There was somebody who became Governor General, maybe?
Sorry, Governor General. You're right. That's what it was. And it was our only female speaker in the history of Canada, which is kind of crazy.
So this was an unfortunate series of events. The Prime Minister also, just a couple of days ago, apologized on behalf of Parliament. He apologized to Canadians. He apologized to the international community for this. I'm going to call it a gaffe. It was a tremendous mistake. It's hard to find the right word, actually, and you don't get second chances on something like this.
Yeah.
It's the accountability is demanded and executed relatively quickly.
Yeah. And I think the outstanding question for me in this story is, what is that vetting process? Like, can I just call up my MP and say, hey, I want to go and see a wartime president speak? Can I come? Or is there a real vetting process where they look at both criminal history and political history? Because for me, the thing that stands out is the fact that Zelensky was standing there in the House of Commons, and that security question. I mean, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have brought this up a few times in the House already this week. But as somebody that used to work for the Minister of Public Safety, when we would have visiting dignitaries, we would do checks on who's going to be in that room with them. Imagine having a visiting dignitary who's actively at war. So for me, that is the big question mark, is like, how did this happen? What's the process? And how do we make this never happen again? Aside from the layers upon layers of issues with having this person in Parliament, also being, the Jewish community that has come out and asked very clearly for both the Prime Minister and the Speaker to apologize, which they now have. The Speaker's resigned, as you said. But now the Jewish community, Simon Wiesenthal is still asking, and B'nai B'rith, I believe, are asking for records when Canada did, in the 1970s, did what do they call those commissions? Sorry, on war criminals that were living in Canada. They're asking for those records to be unsealed, unredacted, and to continue on with that search for people that are war criminals in Canada. So there's still questions that are lingering in terms of how we move past this. But I would say, all in all, it's really about what happens next now. How does the House of Commons move on from this incident?
Yeah, and so the big thing, obviously, that happens is that when a House Speaker resigns or is no longer in that role, Parliament stops, and Parliament can't continue. The proceedings of Parliament can't continue until a new House Speaker is elected. That person is, for our listeners, for those who are not as familiar, that role is really an independent role. So while they're elected as part of a party, once you assume the role of a House Speaker, you become an independent body, and your role is really to take care of the business of Parliament and the decorum in Parliament, and what decorum or lack thereof. Kind of like a referee. But every single MP is essentially on the ballot to become the next Speaker of the House. There are those who will make their intentions known, that they really want the role. And for most of history, the role has been assumed by a member of the governing party.
Yes.
Not always, but mostly. So, but I think it could go either way. What do you think?
Well, as you know, I'm a huge nerd for parliamentary procedure. So the selection of a new speaker is just really exciting for me. And so I have done a deep dive. You can, if any of you want to go on my Instagram, I've actually done a highlight on how we elect a speaker in Canada. But the reason that it's often somebody from the government is because when we have a majority government, the party in power has the most seats to spare. And so typically when we see minority governments, as we're in right now, we don't always get somebody from the government. It's based on seat count, right? Because if you are I'll take the Liberals in this instance, they're sitting as a minority government. If one of their members becomes the speaker, that means that they lose a seat. And I get that question from people a lot. If your speaker, does it still count? No, it doesn't. They become completely independent. So are the Liberals going to be willing to get rid of one extra seat when they're in a minority government? I would say right now there's enough buffer. They have enough seats to retain that minority status. But we'll have to see, because there's a Conservative and an NDP woman actually who are looking to run. I don't know about you, and I'm just going to say it. I really would like to see a female speaker, and I'd like to see members standing up and saying, Madam Speaker, instead of Mr. Speaker.
I would like that too. NDP MP Carol Hughes.
That's
has
right.
Has made it clear that she's interested. She's currently a deputy speaker. So
Mm-hmm.
there is some precedence there for one of the as I've been kind of looking like historically who becomes Speaker of the House and tends to be somebody who has been an MP for a number of years, really understands the proceedings of the House. So somebody who's a deputy speaker would be a good candidate. They also have to get 50 votes plus one, which is another reason why it's tricky for a minority government to assume that role, right? Because you're going to need some other party's support. But I was going to
hugely dork out and ask you who your favorite speaker of all time was.
Well, I was going to ask you a really funny question and see if you know the answer to that. Okay, first of all, did you know that there's a dean of the House?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I didn't know that.
There's also a baby of the House.
Okay, I didn't know that either. Nope.
So the dean of the House is the oldest sitting member, the longest sitting member, and that person actually, and I think this is what you were trying to reference, is going to take over as speaker in the meantime until Parliament selects their new speaker on Tuesday. What's his name? He's from the Bloc.
Louis Plamondon. I probably totally butchered his name. He is 80 years old. He has been sitting in the House of Commons since 1984. He is a member of the Bloc, which so the irony did not go over his head. When he was interviewed on this, he said, I think it's a bit funny that he, a Quebec sovereigntist, would be Speaker of the House of Commons for a short period of time. So that is our fun factoid for the week.
And the baby of the House is the youngest elected person.
Who is the baby? Do you know?
I don't know. It used to be an NDPer. That's a great question. We should look that up. Can I Google in the middle of a podcast?
Why not? Why not Google?
Baby of the House of Commons, Canada.
So while Rachael is Googling, the election is going to take place on Tuesday. We will have a new Speaker of the House of Commons, and that will be an exciting day. So we'll certainly reference this next week on our podcast. Did you find out who the baby is?
All right. Currently, it's Eric Melilio, who is from Kenora, Ontario. I believe he's a Conservative. And he was born in 1988 and elected at the age of 21. The youngest member of the Senate is Patrick Brazeau. We knew that. And the youngest person ever elected to the House of Commons was 19 years and 11 months old in 2011. Wow. Pierre-Luc Dussault. Interesting.
Okay.
Well, anyways.
Learn something new every day here.
Learn something new. No kidding. Okay, so Tuesday we're going to have this election. What do you think? What's going to happen? Should we place bets?
You know, I was kind of in your camp. I'm sort of liking this idea of Carol Hughes, Deputy Speaker, NDP. Yeah. I think I like the idea of that. So maybe we'll put that out there into the universe.
My big question mark with her, though, is whether or not the NDP are willing to lose that seat, because they don't have as many. So that would be my only hesitation. But I think ultimately, okay, I'm going to go with the Liberal. I think we'll have a Liberal speaker. Greg Fergus, he's going to be Speaker on Tuesday.
And I have a lot of time for Greg Fergus. I'm a fan of Greg Fergus. Greg, if you're listening to this, I was not suggesting that anyone but you should be Speaker. I just said it would be kind of interesting if we had a woman Speaker, because that hasn't happened. I don't think has it happened in our lifetime?
I think a little bit before.
Yeah. So
at the 70s.
We'll take that.
Should we rename this podcast to Google politics.com? Yeah, I think it was a little bit earlier. It was like the 60s or 70s when she stepped down to be Governor General. Mm-hmm. Send all your hate mail to us because I can't remember. Yeah, and also if this future speaker is listening, we'd love a tour of the House of Commons. Maybe we could tape live in the House. How cool would that be?
It'd be so cool.
We should work on that.
Love it.
Anyways, all right. So we have an exciting episode coming up for you. Tomorrow is also Truth and Reconciliation Day, and we are speaking to two incredible guests. We have Karen Restoule and President Sandmaier here with us to talk about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Truth and Reconciliation Day, but also to take all of our listeners' questions that they wrote in. So we're going to open up the floodgates of questions and see what they can answer for us. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I can't wait for this conversation.
All right. Well, we will be right back with our panel. Welcome back. In 2013, Orange Shirt Day began in Canada as a way to recognize and create awareness around the Canadian residential school system. In 2021, the federal government passed a bill to create a statutory holiday, Truth and Reconciliation Day, to be observed on September 30th every year.
So tomorrow is the third Truth and Reconciliation Day in Canada. And actually this morning I put the orange t-shirts on my kids and just this morning tried to have a conversation with them about why they were wearing these t-shirts, which is never a good idea. There's not enough time over toast in the morning. But it occurred to me that these conversations sometimes, we're putting the shirt on, but do we know why we're putting the shirt on as moms who are putting that shirt on? And I think for me and some of my peers and colleagues, as I talked to them about this topic and my friends, one of the things we said about the barrier to having this conversation is feeling like maybe you're not informed enough, or maybe I might say the wrong thing. So I'm really excited to have a frank and open dialogue today. We're going to talk about Indigenous peoples. We're going to talk about government and truth and reconciliation. And we have some incredible guests who are going to share their views.
We are so thrilled to welcome our two guests today. First, we have President Andrea Sandmaier, who is the newly elected president of the Metis Nation of Alberta. And with her, we have Karen Restoule, who is a vice president with Crestview Strategies and is Dokis First Nation. Hello to you both.
Thanks for having
Why
us.
don't we start with your backgrounds?
Yeah, so my name is Andrea Sandmaier. I'm from Cold Lake, Alberta. Previously the Region 2 Vice President within the Metis Nation of Alberta and the first president under our new Otipemisiwak government within the Metis Nation of Alberta. So it's pretty exciting. Lots of work to do, a whole new governance structure, and lots of citizens representatives to get to know, and looking forward to getting to work. Well, already getting to work. So
I'm sure they threw you right in there. All right.
Yeah.
And Karen, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm from Dokis First Nation, which is a very small but mighty community in the northeastern part of Ontario. If you don't know us, I'd encourage you to start following us. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of our territory. I'm a vice president at Crestview Strategy. I'm also the founder and CEO of Bold Realities, a nonprofit that we started in 2016 to help contribute to advancing economic reconciliation. And in 2018, we co-partnered with Taking It Global to launch Whose Land, which is a web-based app that helps users situate themselves across the country and across North America in relation to Indigenous communities and territories. So if you haven't already, check it out, whose.land. It's a great tool, especially as we head into our third September 30th recognition and commemoration day. Always helpful to inform ourselves as we go about our journeys.
That's the perfect segue to my first question, which is, okay, so tomorrow is Truth and Reconciliation Day in Canada. And for all of our listeners, and we asked a lot of questions about this topic, and actually we got a lot of questions from our listeners. Can you break down for us what that means? What is Truth and Reconciliation Day, and how did we get here?
Karen?
Truth and Reconciliation Day, to my understanding, was recommended by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a day to, one day a year to commemorate the experiences of those who survived, the experiences of the families who lost a loved one, a child, and to really recognize, I would say, the darker shades of our shared history as Indigenous peoples and Canadians. You mentioned, Amanda, the orange shirt. If I can just touch on that one before passing it over to President Sandmaier. I recently got this question from a colleague this year saying, what shade of orange does it have to have a crest?
Right.
What design? Where do I do this right? There's a lot, and it's very Canadian to want to do it right and to not, further alienate or extend our relationship. We want to bring ourselves closer together. And how I provided, insights into that was, the story of Phyllis Webstad when she was young. She wore her favorite orange shirt to her first day of residential school, at which point it was removed from her and she never saw it again. And then she was subjected to everything that came with an institution like residential school. And she never forgot that moment where she was removed that orange shirt. And I think we can all agree it goes beyond just losing the orange shirt. It extends to her identity as a First Nations girl, her language, her culture, her traditions, and the ability to be able to relate with her family through the course of her childhood. Now, the orange shirt recognizes all of that, right? It causes people to say, you're wearing an orange shirt, why? Let's learn more. But it also demonstrates a commitment to wanting to learn, but more importantly, taking the steps as a Canadian society towards ensuring that we right the wrongs, build a new path together, but never forget where we came from and allow that to steer us ahead.
That was such a beautiful summary and helpful, actually. And I think I actually shared that story with my kids, talked about that story this morning. And they were, it's interesting when you talk to kids about things like, why would they take her orange shirt? Like they're just, it's like impossible for them to get their heads around, and then to even go deeper than that and to try to find this balance of what is appropriate, what kind of conversation is appropriate to have with, your 9-year-old and your 6-year-old, and at the same time want them to like proudly wear this shirt and understand at least a little what it means. So thank you for that.
I want to ask you, President Sandmaier, what is the significance to you of having Truth and Reconciliation Day?
Well, I think that, it's wonderful that we have the statutory holiday now, but I think every day we need to remember. We need to remember where we came from. We need to remember, what our citizens, what our people have been through. Every day should be Truth and Reconciliation. Every day we should be practicing that, and every day we should be listening to the stories of elders and of survivors, and really getting to know where they come from and why we're in the position that we're in today.
When we say reconciliation, I think that's a word that goes over a lot of people's heads. How do you define reconciliation?
I think the simplest way is reconciliation. It's getting behind, doing something about the things that have been done over hundreds of years to First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. The calls to action are calls to action, reconciliation. So, we need to, as Canadians, as Indigenous people, work together to fulfill those actions and work on it every single day.
Speaking of actions, when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released their final report, there were 94 calls to action. That was in 2015. Yep. I feel like in 2015, and I've been doing commentary in politics for a long time, and I feel like we really talked about it a lot in 2015. And I don't know if it's just me. I feel like have we talked about where those actions, do we know where the 94 calls to action are at. Can either of you give us, not all 94, but give us kind of a summary? Where are we at? Are we actioning 94 items right now?
There's actually a group, and I don't know what's happening out west, or so I'll leave that to you to answer. But there's a group out of TMU in Toronto. It's called the Yellowhead Institute, led by Hayden King. Is it Hayden King? Yeah, it's Hayden King. I'm drawing a blank. I hope I didn't mess up the name. Anyway, Yellowhead Institute. And they actually, if you go to their website, they have been tracking, creating a report card, at least for the last 2 years, possibly longer than that, where they themselves go in and assess where governments are at in terms of responding to the 94 calls to action. And so very kind of like practical guide to see where it's at. There's also one of the calls to action that talks about a Truth and Reconciliation Council that would empower the ability to have oversight over government, by extension, kind of like an independent body at arm's length from government, to check in with government annually to see what progress has been made on the 94 calls to action. Now, folks might think, oh, Karen, you're a hard ass and you always talk about results, making sure that things get implemented. Yes, I do, particularly on this point. I think we can all agree the bits that we've seen and learned about the Indian Act, that it's done a lot of damage. So when we talk about reconciliation, in my view, this is how I've reconciled it for myself as an Indigenous woman, is there's two paths. There's the one in our communities where we ourselves are taking action to rebuild and revitalize the very things that were lost and destroyed. And that work squarely happens within our own lane, within our own boat, within our own canoe. And then you have mainstream governments and societies, institutions, industry, nonprofit, who are in their boat, where that relationship that have constructed a system that have effectively pushed us out for a very long time. And there's that Indigenous crown, nation to nation relationship you often hear it referenced. And we have to repair that relationship, because for 150 plus years, it's been about pushing down, pushing aside, segregating, assimilating. And so we have to reimagine what the future looks like in a way that that honors both of our places here on these lands.
Ooh, I want to jump in all about Crown Indigenous relationships. Just for our audience, so that you know, the relationship is still ingrained in our laws, and that responsibility for that relationship remains with the federal government. It's really still a contentious issue. And President Sandmaier, the Indian Act, I teach a course on Canadian politics, and we touch upon Indigenous politics and government. And the first assignment that I have them do is to look at the Indian Act and to talk about whether or not it still exists and what should be changed. And the number one piece of feedback that I get when I assign them that assignment is they come back and they go, I can't believe that law still exists, that the Indian Act is still part of Canadian law. So I want to put to you, President Sandmaier, why is the Indian Act still in Canadian law?
Well, I think Karen probably could answer that question better than me, as I am Métis, and we don't fall within the Indian Act. As a cousin to a lot of First Nations, First Nations people are our cousins, and I think there needs to be some serious conversations with the Crown to discuss the Indian Act
Okay, I'll go to Karen after that.
So
I'll come back. Let's go back to Amanda's question.
It needs to be gone.
Yeah, I can. You want me to overlay on that? I can provide. So it's a tough question. I can appreciate the hesitation on your end. Essentially, the Indian Act has cut right through Indigenous laws around citizenship and identity.
Hmm.
So if you look at Section 6 of it, fundamentally it decides who is and who is not Indigenous in this country, an Indian in this country, and that to me is just like a fundamental affront to a nation, a people. And it sets limitations based on blood quantum, which is very much a Western framework to determine belonging and citizenship and belonging. And there's a whole host, if you sit with some elders who carry that knowledge, or even some of the law professors out of University of Victoria's Faculty of Law, like John Burroughs, Val Napoleon, I know Sarah Morales does some work. There's a whole host of law profs who have dove into revitalizing Indigenous legal principles through a lot of those teachings. And many of them will tell you how citizenship and belonging were determined prior to the implementation of the Indian Act. So that's one narrow area. And I think we can all agree that when the government is telling you how to live your lives and when to, when to act and when not to act and restrict, it's never really a good thing when government's in your house. But
should the Indian Act be removed? Is it time to get rid of the Indian Act?
100%. But we'd have to make sure that we have something respectful in place that allows us to move into a governance model that respects our original governance systems here on these lands. That's already in play. If you look at BC, there's a modern treaty commission that has started that work. There's a number of nations in BC that are self-governing, have autonomy. The Indian Act and Indian Affairs are not in their living rooms telling them what to do and how to live their lives. There's a number of nations across the territories who are also in that position. And then there's the James Bay Cree in northern Quebec who initiated those talks in the 70s and revisited them with the Quebec government and the federal government in the 90s. So there's some movement there. I would say probably an easy maybe 15% of the nations across the country are operating in a way external to the Indian Act, but there's a lot of work to be done between BC and Quebec to get those historic treaties up and running and get us out of the Indian Act.
Okay, so we asked, as Amanda noted, our listeners to send in any burning questions that they might have about Indigenous politics or government or things they've always wanted to know. And so I'm going to start with you, President Sandmaier, but you both agreed to answer these questions willingly, openly, and we feel so privileged to be able to do this. So why don't we start with the first question that we got, and that was, what is the difference between the terms Indigenous and Aboriginal?
Well, I honestly, my personal opinion, is I don't really like either of those.
You don't? Okay.
Terms. We are Métis, First Nation, and Inuit. We are three distinct people. So yeah, I'm not a fan of grouping the Indigenous, Aboriginal, and we are all three distinct people. That's my opinion.
I could offer a bit of a more technical overlay on that. So
go for it.
For a long time, people in Canada referred to us as Aboriginal because that's the term that was used in the Constitution. 1982, Section 35 identified us as Aboriginal with the subgroups offered by President Sandmaier here, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. And then I would say about 10, 15 years ago, heavy discussion and dialogue coming out of the UN, the United Nations, in and around a declaration on the rights of Indigenous people. And that pushed people to move from the term Aboriginal to the term Indigenous so that it lays within that international legal framework. And much like we've said here, we're now at a point in time in reconciliation where a lot of our nations are reclaiming our own name for ourselves in our language. And so I'm from Dokis, which is an Ojibwe nation, but Ojibwe in my language is Anishinaabe. So you would say I'm from the Anishinaabe nation, and I'm from Dokis, the community of Dokis. So I think that's where we're headed. Those are more detailed nuances, but for now, I suppose we're being patient with Canadians and bringing them.
It's a lot of patience. It's a lot of patience. One of the questions around, and I'm going to phrase it the way they phrased it, which was, how do we get more Indigenous voices at the decision-making table without tokenism? Either of you have a perspective on that?
Oh, that is a huge issue. Working in community, I work in, prior to being elected as president, I worked in a small, in Region 2, which is like northeastern Alberta, Cold Lake, Bonnyville. It's, very, very small. And I would say that's a lot of times when people have asked us to sit on a committee, or, can you come and teach us about the Métis, all of those things. You do feel like you're just a box that they need to check. But I think that, in our election that just happened, we went from 6 regions within the Métis Nation now to 22 districts. We have also myself as president, and we also have an elected youth representative and an elected women's representative. Out of all 25 of those people, there is a large number of young people who put their name forward and are now sitting on that Citizens Council. So I do think that with education, with people like our national president, President Cassidy Karen, who is young and just an inspiration to young Métis people, and myself, not so young. But I think more people are starting to put their name forward to sit at those tables, so we don't have to be that check mark anymore.
Do you have a thought on why that's happening? Why there's a younger group coming in to fill that void or that necessity? Do you have a sense of what is provoking that change?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think that within the Métis Nation of Alberta, and with everything that's been going on in the last 5 to 7 years, with the progress that we have made with self-government and our constitution, and there's been, a lot of young people coming out and wanting to know what we're doing and being engaged in what we're doing. And then, we also have, like I had said earlier, is that we have a young national president, President Cassidy Karen, who was, she was a youth leader before she was elected as Métis National Council president. So people look up to that, they see her doing that. And then there's just more opportunity for education for citizens. Right. In Alberta, we have Rupert's Land Institute, and we have great post-secondary programs for people to get to be educated. So, yeah, I think I'm excited. I'm excited to have a council that has a lot of young minds.
Love that.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes here, and I want to power through a few more of these questions that we got from our listeners. I think the number one question was land acknowledgements. How do you make sure that they're meaningful and they're not performative?
I say they're as meaningful as you make them, right? So I referenced Whose Land when I introed myself. We have videos there from youth from across the country who are sharing their own acknowledgement of land and place and people and water. And so if you want to be inspired, go check out their videos. But land acknowledgements, in my view, it's just acknowledging the place where you are, the history under your feet, the people around you who have helped to shape that place, and shape it in a way that allowed all of us to be able to benefit from the land and water today, but also recognize the responsibility that comes with that, with, on our generation, to be able to take care of the land and the water in a way that future generations can continue to access these same places that we've enjoyed in our time. And then if you're so inclined, if you're there as an organizational or institutional rep, you might want to say what you're doing to support reconciliation. I see land acknowledgements as really a moment of reflection on where we're at in the reconciliation process, but more importantly, what it is that we're all doing, however big or small, what we're all doing to pitch in to move things onto a better path.
I love that. Reconciliation.
Exactly.
I know, I won't forget that one.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard it that way.
I totally agree with Karen. I think it has to be meaningful. You can, so many times you go to different events and or meetings with industry or corporations that just say it with no thought or meaning behind it. To me, it's, if you're not going to have that action behind it and be purposeful, then why are you doing it?
It's a great point.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about land acknowledgements is that sometimes I think sometimes it's the only thing that some people are hearing. And that's interesting, because it's like, if you're not in school and perhaps you're taking a course in which this is a part of the dialogue, maybe a land acknowledgement is the only time that you're having any kind of association. And I think that in that way, maybe there's some very underlying kind of meaning to it, because it reminds people that we have to be having these conversations, that there has to be this level, even this tiny minor level of acknowledgement, if you consider it that way, because you're hearing it, because it's present, because it's part of the events you're at or the things that you're doing. It's part of your everyday life.
And it helps ground you, it helps to ground you and reflect on that. Who walked these lands before?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the follow-up to that is it better to not do a land acknowledgement or to do it insincerely?
I like to see people trying.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're human.
I like that.
And we make mistakes. That is fundamentally what makes us human, is that we err. But what's important is that we have tried with sincerity. And we try again. We learn and we try again, and we keep trucking forward. I think I just want to mention one of the first politicians that I heard doing land acknowledgements were Premier Kathleen Wynne.
Oh,
Amanda got excited.
That was for you, Amanda. I thought you'd appreciate it.
Thank you. A little shout out to liberals in the audience.
Okay. 2 more questions?
I think that, let's do 2 more for sure. I want to talk for another hour. This is such a good conversation to have. In this spirit of trying, a teacher asked us this: how do you suggest we instruct on cultural practices that are not our own?
Ask an
elder. That becomes okay.
Right,
I love
Karen? That. Have a subject matter expert come.
Yes. Smart.
Their voice.
It's not the time to DIY,
Exactly. Let's YouTube it.
We laugh, but it's kind of true. A lot of people are using YouTube to educate. And it's a really strong point to have that voice in your classroom. I know when I teach my class, I'm always looking for Indigenous voices to come in and to speak to my students. And I know that's probably a common thing amongst teachers everywhere, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, there are a lot of willing knowledge keepers out there that would love to go into schools and teach cultural practices and educate kids on our ways, in our ways. So reach out to people, reach out to local Indigenous community. And
if our listeners want to reach out, how do we go about finding people who are willing to share?
For us in Alberta, and just because I'm, was in a vice president role before this, when I was vice president in Region 2, you wear a lot of different hats. So I actually did go into schools and did some Métis culture and history training or education with kids and stuff too. But you just reach out to your local community, whether that be a Métis, if you're looking for a Métis elder or knowledge keeper to come in, or if it is, a First Nation community that you want to have in your school. You just have to reach out, and believe me, we love that. We love to be able to share who we are.
I love hearing that. Okay, final question. This is on a lot of people's minds, especially in July, Canada Day. Should it be eliminated, or should we still celebrate it?
Nothing like ending on a good controversial question. Over to you two.
I could actually, yeah, bomb for the end. Great.
Yep.
There you go.
We like to save our best questions for last.
I actually wrote about this in a reflective piece. So I contribute to the hub.ca, the Hub Canada, from time to time. And I wrote on this very point this year in July, when the editor asked how we would be spending Canada Day. I try to be home right there in Dokis with my family at a shared home there on the river. And what we do is we gather as a family and usually head up on the water, spend a day swimming. Someone will fry fresh fish on the shore, fresh cut fries, and just really enjoy what these lands have to offer. And I think oftentimes we, as Canadians, take what we have right here under our feet for granted. And it's just a great way to appreciate what we all enjoy here. And at the end of the day, there are fireworks at home. Not every community chooses to have them, but we do have them. What'll happen is there'll be pockets of families up and around the river that will let go their own set of fireworks, but we can all see and hear them at such a small place. And it really is a celebration of our contribution of everything that we've built here. And finally, I would offer that it is a bit of a contentious day in the sense like we are celebrating, what the Crown set up in 1867. Right here on our backs. And it hasn't been, as we've referenced here, hasn't always been a positive relationship. That said, that's every day for an Indigenous person in this country. That's not just on Canada Day. That history weighs on us every day. And for me, when I wake up in the morning, I have a choice. I can let the past weigh down, or I can look forward and say, what am I doing to build a better tomorrow? And so it's the same thing on Canada Day. We're going to wake up. We're going to be proud of what we've done. Let us be inspired for tomorrow, and pause every now and then to celebrate the contributions that we've made.
Yeah, that was so good. I wish that we had another hour. I really wish that we did. I hope that you will consider coming back because I feel better equipped in these, however long we had, 35 minutes together to have a dialogue than I did prior to that. So unfortunately, that's our show for this week. We are wrapping up. We have learned so much today. I want to thank our guests, President Sandmaier, Karen Restoule. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for your brilliant dialogue today. It was incredibly meaningful, and I know our listeners will feel like they've learned so much. Thank you.
And I want to thank Danny Horowitz and Jonathan Panetta for our theme music, and Tim Truax for all of your help in production. We're back next week with another episode, so stay tuned. We'll talk to you next week.